Ich vereinisch alles, was da ist. I universally unite all that is. Well, what is? Mortals, immortals, male, female, you name it. The purpose of the phoenix is to unite them all. So this uniting, this putting together that Joseph Smith did in facsimiles number 1, 2, and 3, this is beautiful Egyptian touch. He couldn't have done it better in such a short, succinct manner. Joseph Smith is doing this the beautiful Egyptian way. So, this theme, this principle, this connection of Osiris, Isis, Re, Ta, Mot, all of the ancient gods explicitly mentioned in Egyptological literature. I've used dozens and dozens of Egyptologists here. And, of course, the king, and later with the common folk, this uniting of the principle, Klaus Baer and John Wilson, and they commented on the Joseph Smith papyri. They showed how Ta-Sher-Min was united with Osiris herself, and unibly demonstrated how the male participants in the rituals actually dressed up as the goddesses. Now, this is fascinating because this has been critiqued also. But even in the coffin texts, Raymond Faulkner's translation of the coffin texts, it talks about donning the person, the individual, dons the gown of the goddess Hathor so that he can become Hathor. He actually takes the garb of the goddess and wears it to show he has united with her. And this explains the incongruity of the men dressing up as women in the facsimile number 3 as well. No, it's not our method in the modern West, but it's not our method that needs to be understood. Whether they did, they clearly did identify and unite with the gods and goddesses to gain their powers and their goodness and their abilities to help their own earthly rule as pharaohs and kings and princes. This leads to a more comprehensive understanding, along with the imitating and dressing up as the role of the goddesses. The actual uniting with the deities gave them the power of the deities, and Adolf Rusch and Erich Hornung, among other Egyptologists, they explained that the uniting of the king with Osiris, and the perfect reason why Abraham took Osiris's place on the lion couch, of course, is because denn als Osiris betrachteten Totenkönig aufzuwecken. That is, Osiris is viewed as the dead king to be reawakened. This is the point. Lana Troy closes her argument with the powerful reminder of what we're up against in studying the ancient Egyptian religion. And the critics need to pay attention here. This is an Egyptologist. Here's what she is proposing and says. What to us may appear contradictory is, when examined in a larger context, the expression of a congruent line of reasoning based on a well-developed system of categorization. Joseph Smith's explanations may appear at first contradictory to us, but when we take in the broader context of how the Egyptians understood this, the contradictions disappear. This is vital to understand. What causes contradictions with the religion and with Joseph Smith and the ancient Egyptian facsimiles in the Book of Abraham is precisely because we are trying to view this from our own bias. This is not the proper way to understand it, though. She says, the principle of acquiring the God's characteristics and powers is expressed beautifully in the book of Wandering Through Eternity, where it explicitly states, Du gehst heraus bei Tag, du vereinst dich mir der strahlenden Sonnenscheib. What that translates is, You go forth by day, you unite or you join with the radiating, beaming sun disk. Once this background is understood, the anomaly of facsimile number 3 completely disappears. Joseph Smith is not wrong. We are for thinking that there's problems and contradictions because we're approaching this from our viewpoint. Pharaoh and his prince can and should and have to be identified as the goddesses of rulership, because Isis gave her throne to Pharaoh. And in fact, Isis is the throne. And Mot, the goddess of order, justice, and truth, because that's how Pharaoh was supposed to rule in the first place. His identification with Osiris is virtually assured. The society that he rules over, he is literally the Pantocrator. That is the universal ruler of all creation, according to Louis Zabkar. And I know it's starting to seem like I'm repeating myself a lot, but it's important to understand that I have gone through dozens of Egyptologists and their descriptions of Isis and Mot and Osiris and Pharaoh and the king and so on and so forth. And there's another Egyptologist that I need to read to you that is very important to understand this principle that we are seeing in facsimile number 3. Mot is both a notion and a goddess. She can be seen as a personified notion of order, not necessarily as a person, a real female. Seen this way, and understanding the Pharaoh's desire to have the powers of the gods and the goddesses, there's no incongruity at all in Joseph Smith's interpretation of Prince of Pharaoh as Mot. Anthony Spalinger presents this even more powerful. He says this: the Egyptian trinity of God, King, Mot cannot be separated without losing the basis of kingship. That's fascinating. They have to be together, and that's exactly what we find in facsimile number 3 as Joseph Smith identifies it. In the older times, God lives by the rule of Mot. God lives by the rule of Mot, which the gods applied to the people in the judicial function. The Richtlicher function is how they put it. That surely ought to give pause to critics before criticizing Joseph Smith putting these together in facsimile number 3. Mot is a goddess of order, justice, and truth, showing Pharaoh the path that he had to pursue in his rulership. The early Egyptian wisdom literature postulates a pre-existing pervasive order and harmony in the universe. In human life, this is expressed through a canon of behavior that is serene, that is optimistic in attitude, and orderly in one's approach to fulfilling the duties of a social being. This theme is called Mot, corresponding in principle to the neter in the cosmic order. But Mot also refers to the way, or the path, the Egyptian conception of the original, unadulterated, universal arrangement. And this arrangement is perfect equilibrium.